Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says new information released by the acting director of national intelligence is sparking questions about Joe Biden. Paul wonders if Biden used the unmasking of General Michael Flynn to help set Flynn up for an erroneous prosecution. One America's John Hines has more.
You know, there have been rumors for years that President Obama's administration was abusing this unmasking power. And so we wrote a letter to the Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grinnell, and said, was this happening? And fortunately, he's shown some light on it. He declassified it. And this is extraordinary. We discovered today that Vice President Joe Biden was one of those who unmasked, but not just him. The Vice President unmasked General Flynn, but so did James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan, Samantha Powers, a whole bevy of people. President Obama's chief of staff also unmasked. And people have to understand what unmasking means. Unmasking to me is essentially the equivalent of an illegal wiretap. They had permission to listen to the Russian ambassador, but they didn't have a permission to listen to the Americans talking. And I know that sounds weird, but you don't want to get an American caught up who's just innocent, doesn't say anything wrong, and be able to listen to their private conversations. Why is this important? Well, because President Obama is a political opponent of President Trump. The Democrats are opponents of the Republicans. You remember we had a whole big circus and a trial up here about people using government to go after their political opponents. That's exactly what Joe Biden did. He used this unmasking to go after General Flynn. They set him up for a prosecution, which I think was a fake and erroneous prosecution. But they did that by doing something that's nefarious, it's wrong, and I think ought to be illegal to unmask people. They didn't have a warrant. They didn't go to a constitutional court. They had one of these secret warrants to go after a foreigner, but then they trapped an American. And this is my big complaint about what's going on with FISA. So I have an amendment tomorrow that we'll do on the floor, and my amendment will say that the investigation of President Trump, where they used the secret court, shouldn't happen again, that Americans should be exempt from this foreign intelligence court because it should be used on foreigners. That's what it was intended to do. So I'll have this amendment to try to fix the situation and reform FISA tomorrow on the floor of the Senate.
This was a phone call that apparently was monitored between General Flynn and the Russian ambassador. Right. What was the purpose, perhaps, in having this information unmasked?
That's what I mean. So, I mean, let's say they were talking and someone said, hey, let's bomb the Capitol. That's a big deal. That's conspiracy to commit violence and terrorism. You would want to unmask them. But if they're having a conversation, and I haven't seen the transcript of it, but if they were and it was about policy between Russia and the United States and it's the incoming national security advisors, there'd be zero, absolutely zero reasons. Here's the problem. I think people have known this for years, that all these people were involved, but finally the Director of National Intelligence, Rick Grinnell, had the guts and the integrity to put this out there, because this is a big deal. There's zero national security interest in unmasking him. There's a great deal of political interest in unmasking him, but that's hitting the nail on the head. Unless they were discussing something illegal or some kind of plot against America, then you'd have the right to unmask him. Short of that, you got to wonder why 15 high-ranking people in Obama's administration, and you really have to ask the question, was President Obama himself involved? His chief of staff was listening to the phone call, unmasking the phone call. Joe Biden was. They're all doing this in this hurry-up period between the election and the inauguration. Something doesn't smell right here. Something was seriously wrong. This is a huge scandal, huge abuse of power, and I hope we really move forward with getting to the truth here.
You mentioned moving forward. Does this add some currency, some gravitas, or perhaps some momentum to your amendment, perhaps?
Yeah, because it shows this abuse of power and these secret courts, these intelligence courts that can soak up so much information. I told people when I was a kid and I read 1984, I wasn't too worried because we didn't have two-way television sets. And now we have all of that. I'm more worried about 1984 than I ever have been because the technology's out there. They can soak up every phone call. They can listen to every phone call. So we can't trust men to be angels. That's what Madison said. We put these limitations on government because men aren't angels on either side of the coin. Nobody, Republicans, Democrats, nobody are angels. So we put these rules on government so you can't spy on your opponents. But in this case, Joe Biden and a whole cabal of Obama high-ranking officials all listened to an American's private conversations, and that to me is an illegal eavesdropping and should never happen, and there was no national security reason for it. But that's precisely the question the media should ask these people. What was the national security reason for unmasking General Flynn? There was none, but there certainly were political reasons.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.